See all the viewers tuning in at Edmonton Freedom Central. There is an extra special event going on today at the Centennial Flame at the Alberta Legislature grounds. I'm Benita with Edmonton Freedom Central and All Fared Up for Freedom and Alberta for Liberty. And we've got Selena here from Edmonton Freedom Central. And Selena is going to tell you a bit about what to expect at today's event.
So today, obviously it's Remembrance Day, November 11th, and we are here first and foremost to honor those that fought for our freedoms, our fallen soldiers, and we're here to pay respect for them. In tandem with that, and given the nature of what a lot of us are facing these days in terms of how that relates to our freedoms, we have a collection of oil and gas workers, utility workers, public employees that are being forced with unjust mandates, and they are here to bring light to respect the freedoms that our fallen soldiers died to be able to provide to us in relation to what we're being faced with now. We will never forget, and that's why we are here today gathering to not only bring attention to our freedoms which are being jeopardized, but also to remember why we are here and to use the bravery of our fellow fallen Canadians to drive home the fact that we will never lose them again.
Yes, exactly. It's been quite the day. We had a Remembrance Day ceremony earlier today at the clamshell stage. Now we're over here at the Centennial Flame for another event. We thought we'd support this event as well. And so I brought my sound system in so that they can amplify any of their messaging. And my understanding of what's going to unfold today is that this group is at some point going to assemble on those stairs. I'll see if I can give you a view. Let's assemble on those stairs there, heading up to the legislature. That's the rear of the legislature building, the south side. So they're going to gather on those stairs, and they're going to be standing for 10 minutes or so in a statement. So you'll find out more about this in a few minutes. We'll be starting in a bit, so we hope you'll tune in. We hope, most importantly, that you share this. Please share this, because the word of what's going on right now really needs to get out, and there are still people unaware that there's these protests happening and these special events happening. So please share it out to your, not just your Freedom Fighter network, but once in a while share it out in messaging to some people maybe that aren't yet like-minded. We recommend that. So please share this out. We'll shut down this broadcast now for a bit, but we'll be starting up again shortly.
You're live, Selena.
Okay. All right. I'm gonna go in.
I can drop a video down. I'll just use your footage on the side.
Okay. Perfect.
To them, I became a born-again ecologist and soon enrolled in a PhD in ecology at the University of BC and became radicalized during the height of the Cold War and the height of the Vietnam War. I joined this little group in the basement of the Unitarian Church who were planning a protest voyage against U.S. hydrogen bomb testing in Alaska. We sailed a little fish boat across the North Pacific, had tens of thousands of people marching in the street, blocking the border between the United States and Canada to get attention. President Nixon canceled those hydrogen bomb tests as a result of the overwhelming public opposition we'd helped create. This was the last hydrogen bomb the United States ever detonated, and it was the birth of Greenpeace. I spent the next 15 years after getting my PhD full-time in the leadership of Greenpeace around the world. Next, we went on to French atmospheric nuclear testing, then saving the whales on the oceans of around the world, and then toxic wastes and uranium mining and nuclear energy and all the other issues that you've heard of. During my nearly 40 years as an ecologist and environmentalist, I have somehow evolved into an environmentalist that supports nuclear energy and is somewhat skeptical of human-caused climate change. Now, on nuclear energy, I'm not out of the ordinary. There's lots of environmentalists today who have decided that nuclear energy is the most effective technology to knock out fossil fuels, to actually replace 2 coal plants with 1 nuclear plant, something you can't do easily with wind and solar, but we'll get to that. But most of the other environmentalists, like James Lovelock, the father of the Gaia hypothesis, Stuart Brand, the founder of the Whole Earth Catalog, Stephen Tyndale, former executive director of Greenpeace UK, and even Bob Marley, they have decided they support nuclear energy. Well, Bob did while he was alive. And most of the reasons for this is climate change. Most environmentalists who have decided we must embrace nuclear technology, it's because they're concerned with fossil fuel consumption, CO2 emissions, and climate change. That's not the main reason I support nuclear energy, although it is part of it. You see, people should sort of wake up to the fact that the climate stopped warming more than 10 years ago. 1998 was the warmest year we've had in the last 100 years. Since then, there has been a slight cooling trend. Yes, the Arctic ice was lowest in 2007 in any summer since we started measuring it only in 1979, so we don't really have a very long data set here. But for the last 2 years, it has been rebuilding. Antarctica never did get warm. It has remained cold, and the sea ice around Antarctica has not shrunk in the slightest. And you can find this easily on the internet. Then there is the fact that hurricane intensity is about 50% of what it was 10 years ago, and it has been a steadily declining intensity since about 1998, the time of the warmest year. So it is worth actually looking at this. Then there is the issue that actually it would be a lot worse if it got 2 degrees colder than it is today than if it gets 2 degrees warmer, in terms of agricultural production in particular. I ask you, why are there 300 million people in the United States and only 30 million people in Canada all huddled up against the 49th parallel? One word: cold. Sometimes I think that's why they let us have it. But it is an absolute fact that the most biodiversity on this planet is in the tropics. The second you move from the tropics into places where it freezes in the winter, biodiversity drops by over 90%, because adaptation to cold, I'm glad I didn't have to make that swim across the North Pole. Adaptation to cold is a very specialized evolutionary adaptation. Only a few species have it. Our species, Homo sapiens, at 10 degrees Celsius, naked outdoors, will freeze to death in not many hours. It doesn't take freezing. It only takes 10 degrees Celsius, and we can't survive in that. So, I'm not going to dwell on climate change a great deal because, personally, I think it's not a crisis or an apocalypse, and I don't even know if we have any way of actually controlling it. And why is it cooling now when all the climate models say it's supposed to continue to get warming? I'm going to wait and see what happens, because I don't think we know at this point. And therefore, I don't believe we should adopt policies that are going to cost tens of billions of dollars and put hundreds of millions of people into energy poverty and make food far more expensive for people who can barely afford it already. There are 800 million people in this world who don't have enough food, and policies that make energy more expensive make food more expensive. So why do I support reducing fossil fuels? Because I do, very strongly. Actually, there are a large number of good reasons. First is the climate change issue. I agree that even though we don't know exactly what's going to happen with the climate, it would be a good idea to slow down the rate of increase in CO2 in the global atmosphere, as a precautionary measure at least. But secondly, nothing causes more damage to human health in the way of pollution than burning fossil fuels in this world. This we know for a fact. It's not just a theory. We know that coal plants in particular emit sulfur and particulates and mercury and far more radiation than any nuclear plant does. They are the worst forms of polluters in the world, so that's a good reason. What about...
Awesome. But thank you for what you're doing. Welcome. Everyone, I am exempt from vaccine mandates. Yes.
I got a little bit slack for friends. I had a couple of private conversations that rocked me.
No, I was just like
from people that
you see the one lady posted about
What sector do you work in right now?
Work at construction.
Construction. Are you guys being mandated right now currently?
Yes, we are. We're mandated January 2nd.
Oh, so it got pushed back again? Or is that new?
Well, that's when, if you're not vaccinated, if you're not jabbed both times, then you're put on leave without pay.
Right. Do you think that leave without pay is any different from being terminated?
No, it's going to turn out to be a termination anyways.
It is. Sure feels that way, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
So you're here today to say what?
I'm just here to stand with everybody else in solidarity. We all have different reasons why we are not choosing to be guinea pigs for an experimental vaccine.
Right.
I could go on. I have a lot of things in my head.
Well, today is Remembrance Day, and we are first and foremost going to pay respect to our fallen soldiers who died on that hill for our freedoms.
Yes.
Do you feel that our freedoms are being jeopardized right now and threatened?
Oh, absolutely. You can see it from anywhere how the media is being, they're censoring. You're only allowed to voice your opinion. If you speak against the narrative, you're silenced or chastised. But yeah, our freedom is it's taken away.
Well, your sign says it all. Coercion is not consent. So if you're using coercion to get someone to do something, then they don't have the freedom to make that decision themselves.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. Well, I'm so glad that you're here today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
This whole thing went down. Grace Life and Fairview open.
What does ivermectin work for?
It helps treat COVID. So it's very similar to the new drug that Pfizer has brought out. In fact, they say Pfizer is copying the generic ivermectin. The only difference is the Pfizer drug costs $800 a course. This costs like $3.
Would you use ivermectin to treat your COVID?
I do.
You would. Oh,
As
you
a
have.
preventive, it's what do you call it? Prophylactic is the fancy word. What it means,
Prevention, correct. And why do you think our government is not approving ivermectin as a viable treatment for COVID?
Because of the money. And the big pharma has so influenced the discussion and so done its thing against it. But if you follow on Twitter at COVID-19 Critical, they are the frontline COVID Critical Care Alliance. Dr. Pierre Corey, he's the lead doctor that testified before the U.S. Senate on how successful they have been treating patients with ivermectin. And that's the video that Google's YouTube has taken down. Now is we have a corrupt Google YouTube, and what they've done is completely illegal, taking down someone testifying before the U.S. Senate. I mean, and so now I think the argument is right to try, right? Nebraska has right to try for ivermectin. Doctors in Nebraska can prescribe ivermectin. Here, Jason Kenney has stepped in between you and your doctor, say this is your wonderful doctor, right? And he says, I will not allow your doctor to prescribe what he considers best for you. I am going to stop that. So Jason Kenney must go.
You know quite a bit about ivermectin, and it sounds like you've done your research as well, and you've also used it. So in terms of our freedoms as individuals, Canadians living in Canada, with the freedom to be able to decide what is best for us and our health, is that being threatened right now? Are we able to do that in this country?
Yes, it's nefarious. It's wrong. The courts will eventually step in and stop it. Eventually, the government will get away with the emergency use authorization for something that turns out perhaps to be harmful. They say the spike protein itself perhaps is toxic. So much is in the future, but the idea is right now, right to try. I mean, you don't stand between me and my doctor. If my doctor says it's good, and I trust my doctor and I consent, that's it. That's medical ethics.
Exactly.
Jason Kenney cannot override medical ethics.
And they are trying to take that freedom away from us.
And they have. And they've caused needless suffering, and they've got to take responsibility. Kenny must resign.
I agree. So we are here today, first and foremost, to honor the fallen who fought for our liberties and our freedoms. And here's a new one that we're all here today fighting for, in tandem with our fallen.
Yeah, the coerced mRNA vax mandates are unethical. You don't force someone to take something by threatening to take their job away. And the nurses that helped so much at the beginning of COVID, now you're threatening to fire them. It's just atrocious.
It is.
Well, these government officials got to go.
Thank you so much for your
Thank
time
you.
and
Thank
for
you for the
being
rally.
One question, what is your name?
I'm Selena.
Selena.
Yes.
Oh, were you driving at the airport or not? Were you one of the drivers? No. No, okay.
Edmonton Freedom Central was there.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Because I kind of posted there and you said something, oh Bill or something like that, but I didn't think you know me.
Thank you so much for being here
Perfect.
today. Thank you. Hi. Can I ask you what sector you guys are with? Are you in one of the sectors here today?
Yes.
The public or the utility?
Yes.
That you can
Utility.
just say yes. That's
I'll just
fine.
say utility.
Okay, that's fine. So today obviously is Remembrance Day. We don't want to forget why we're here, right? But I know there seems to be a lot of commonalities between what freedoms we were fighting for a long time ago and the freedoms that are being threatened on us now. And so in your opinion, I know we're not on the battlefield necessarily with guns, but we are in a psychological, online social media information battle with our governments, some of our doctors, our business owners, our policymakers. So in your opinion, is this relevant to why we are here today?
How to answer that? Yes, it's relevant to why we're here today. We're in jeopardy of losing our jobs. This is for what? Like, my family's worked at this company for over 90 years. I have 4 generations at this company. And 3 of us are about to lose our jobs because of this. I don't know. I don't understand it. I do understand it because I believe God's in this, but I don't understand that other people don't see what's going on. How they think this is okay. It's not.
What has happened to those of us who don't see this for what it really is? What has happened there? Do you think?
They like their lives. They've loved their freedoms all these years, and they're willing to give up things to keep those freedoms. And I guess that's what it is. Give up their medical freedoms. I'm not willing to do that. I don't know. They like their stuff.
Do you think that giving up one freedom for another makes you free?
Definitely not. Definitely not.
So where are those people? Why are they not here today?
I don't know.
They must be enjoying those things that they gave up their medical freedom for.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, that's exactly what they're doing. Just get it, they say.
So how long do you have until you lose your job?
End of the year.
December 31st?
Yes.
Okay, what if I told you that I just learned that the Canada Labour Board has rejected vaccine mandates for all public employees? What would you say to that?
I'd say, praise the Lord. I hope that's the way it is. We've just been hoping something will change for us because my husband's in jeopardy of losing his pension. He's been at the company for 33 years.
There are a lot of angels working out there. There are a lot, and just you being here is significant of the change we do need change, yes, but at this moment in time, we just need to try to preserve and remember that what our fallen soldiers died for is worth fighting for today.
Exactly.
Then and today, we are just fighting for it in a different capacity. We're not trying to take away from that. We are simply honoring what they've done, and we're going to now use that bravery and tandem with the fight that we have in front of us today.
Yeah. I feel this is an insult to them, what's going on. Like, they
Absolutely.
did this for all of us, and now the government's taking it back, is what it feels like.
It's How does it feel to you?
I'm standing for our integrity, the integrity of the people. Giving up everything we've worked for.
You still believe in integrity?
I do.
That's wonderful. We do need some of that, especially in there. Right in there, we need some integrity. I agree. Well, you know what? We're going to keep fighting for you. Give me a hug. Thank you for being here today.
It's so good to see people's faces.
Yes, and hug. We got to start hugging again.
I agree.
So I just told the 6 feet social distancing is pre-programming for facial recognition software. So we get used to like being away from people. So there's a plan behind every plan, Yeah. So we're just going to keep doing what we do, showing up as we can, fighting as best that we can, because you're right. What they are doing is wrong. It's not right. All right. Thanks for being here today.
You have to work. They also go practice. Yeah, the range? Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, I drove by one day. I wasn't sure. Yeah.
Hi there.
So there's 2 houses on there, right? Yeah. Getting ready for gas. Yeah, that's right, yeah.
Can I ask you what sector you're in?
Distribution.
Distribution. Yeah. So is it, are you a public employee?
No.
No.
Private.
Okay. Private? Okay. So when are you expected to have the vaccine or lose your job?
January 1st.
January 1st, okay. How do you feel about that?
I don't feel good at all. I think it's we shouldn't be forced to put something in our body to keep our jobs. It was never a job requirement, and I just don't feel comfortable getting it.
Do you think that expecting people to get a medical procedure, if you will, right? How do I ask this? Do you feel that the choice that's being given to you today, get the vaccine as they're calling it, or lose your job? Do you think that is an infringement on your freedoms?
Absolutely.
Which freedom is that?
Freedom of, I guess, sovereignty over your own body.
Okay.
And there's certain, I guess, rights you have over your body to say no to medical procedures.
Medical freedoms, yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And also disclosing your medical records is also privacy. Right?
That's right. So how do you feel about some of your workers who obviously are not here today, getting the medical procedure? How do you know anyone personally who has felt that they need to do that in order to keep their job?
Yes.
How did they feel after having to go through that process?
Well, I know I personally wouldn't feel like I had any more pride, like if I got forced to do something that could potentially affect my health for the rest of my life. And yeah, I wouldn't feel good about myself ever again if I got forced into doing it. So.
I think you're right. I think that if we start when we start doing that to people, it comes with a level of trauma that gets attached, because it's nothing that you wanted to do. It was wrong, and now you have these feelings that are now attached to you for having gone through that, and it's a certain level of trauma that I'm seeing across the board. Everyone is very sad. We're very depressed. We're being we're losing our light, if you will. And so I think that you being here today is very important. I think that us remembering why our soldiers fought for our freedoms is also very important. I know we're not on the beaches of Normandy, we're not fighting, with guns right now, but it is a certain type of battle that we are facing today, and our freedoms are on the line. So I think that there's a lot of commonalities. Would you agree?
I agree 100%.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I know there's some people in this group that are planning on getting it because they just have no option, so it's sad to see.
Well, there are a lot of angels working in the background to try and get these laws that are already in place to protect us to actually start doing what they're there and designed to do. I'm not really sure how we managed to get this far with the laws in place to protect us, but I know that there's a lot of people working in the background, and we're hoping and we're moving as fast as we can to make sure that those dates either get pushed back or become non-existent. So that's what we're all working towards. And I guess, if we fought for our freedoms before, we can do it again. We're resilient. We're Canadians.
Right.
At the end of the day, we are truly Canadian, and we will not let this bring us down. We're going to keep going regardless. Well, thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Hi there. I also support oil and gas. Are you from the area, or did I talk? I have not talked to you
No,
yet.
you haven't.
No. Do you actually work in oil and gas, or do you?
I
just
used
support?
to, but my husband does, yes.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I'm
So
born and raised Alberta boy.
fantastic. I love it.
I was actually born and raised in Winnipeg, but I felt just closest to Alberta. I moved here twice, and now I live here permanently because it's just like so me. I'm a total redneck girl.
Stay away.
No, I couldn't. Alberta's.
Hi. And what you got there? Hey, is this your little boy?
It is.
Can I put him on camera? Is that
Sure
okay?
can, yeah.
What's your name?
Brantley.
Bradley, can you say
Brantley.
hi?
Can you say hi? Hi, cutie pie. Yeah, we do this for you, buddy. We're doing this for you. For sure. So, can I ask you guys, because most of us know Alberta is oil country, and there's been a lot of talk about the oil in Alberta with the pipelines, with Justin Trudeau capping it, trying to get rid of it, making up this climate change stuff. And I know it's a head shaker for sure. So I'm just curious, like, as somebody working on directly with production, I guess is what you do, directly with production.
Now distribution of natural gas.
Oh, okay. So how do you feel about the negative connotation that our Prime Minister is putting not only on oil and gas, but our province as a whole?
I think it's irate. I think it's unbelievable what he's proposing or what he's telling you, the United Nations, what he's going to do. There's nothing almost in today's world that isn't. There's no industry that isn't related somehow to oil and gas. There isn't. There's no products that you can buy that come, not wrapped in something or that haven't been, produced on a machine or in some shape or form from a byproduct of petroleum. There's just nothing. And I don't understand what they think is going to replace everything. So, yeah, I think it's crazy. It's insane. And the really, really sad part is I think a lot of people would be open to maybe a world with less fossil fuels, but there needs to be some kind of viable replacement, right? Of course. So
Absolutely.
without that plan, this is what you're going to get. You're going to get families who are put out of work. You're going to get people really struggling, financially, mentally, everything. So it's terrible what's happening.
Sorry, I'm just going to give you my quietly, and I want to that's okay. I'm just going to pop that on you though, if that's all right. Okay?
Yeah, for sure.
Because I like what you're saying there. Okay, I'll just pop that right there. Okay.
We'll add it to the collection.
Yeah, exactly. I really liked what you said there. I think that, obviously having some sort of alternative form of energy that is better for the environment might be possible, but would you agree that what Justin Trudeau is doing is almost like waging war against us, and just to come in so quickly and say, nope, that's it, we're not doing it anymore without any sort of transition over? What about all the workers? What about all the jobs that come out of oil and gas? What about all of the homes that get heated, all of the transportation? Like, it's just, doesn't it seem ludicrous to be able to come out and say something like that when you have a nation totally dependent? I mean, the equalization payments that he was getting from oil and gas. So what do you think about that?
Yeah. Well, I think it's ludicrous. I think it's criminal. I think it's turning into a crime against humanity. It's not just Alberta and Canada. It's worldwide with what's going on here. And just if Canada was to completely eliminate the use of their fossil fuels, China or somewhere else is going to just increase theirs, and our impact is going to be negligent on our environmental impact will be negligent, and everyone's just going to struggle here. We're all going to fail and fall apart. It's criminal.
Well, I'm really glad that you guys are here today. We also support oil and gas.
Inspired to be here, and upon arrival, I talked to one of the event organizers and offered my sound system, and he said, yes, that would be great. Hook up your sound system. So here we are. So I just want to express my admiration and standing for freedom. This is a very meaningful day to be standing for freedom. And so you just being here on a cold day like this and being here together in fellowship like this has a huge, huge meaning. This is profound that you're doing this. So it's about oil and gas against the past. And right now, I'd like you to welcome Devin. Please give him a warm welcome.
First of all, I just want to thank everybody for coming here. You have a lot of online support, and then there's people that are actually about to lose their jobs that still don't come. So thank you guys. It's important. It's just important to remember. Now, I'm not very good with holding a mic, so I don't know what's going to happen. I might drop it and then just get really loud. There's people here that definitely know that that's possible. It's gonna be really difficult for me. So I do want to deal with a housekeeping issue. So don't leave signs here or anything laying around. Like, obviously we're a really respectful group. I can see that already. We want to respect this property more than the politicians that work here. Yeah. The next thing is I kind of want to keep cheering down to a minimum because of what day it is. So I appreciate the support, but I do want to make sure that we are respecting what the day is supposed to represent and remember what we're losing. So with that, I want to honor our veterans today and look at what they died for. And what did they die for? They died so that you could live in a free country. And what does that freedom look like? In with a QR code to go into a restaurant. Is that what freedom looks like? It's not. It's not at all what freedom looks like. There are military veterans being denied access to legions because they refuse to put a experimental gene therapy into their body. There's a monument, or I should say it's a Holocaust memorial. It's right down there at the parking lot. You can go see it after. It has multiple quotes on it. Quotes from Martin Niemöller, who is a Lutheran pastor. This is a really famous quote, and I didn't know who it came from. I've just heard it so much, but what it says is, first they came for the communists, but I did not speak up because I was not a communist. Then they came for the union leaders, and I did not speak up because I was not a union leader. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak up because I was not a Jew. And then they came for me, and there was no one to speak up for me, and that's on a statue in the Alberta legislature grounds. Think about that. If you're okay with checking people's papers, how is that freedom for anybody, ever? There's another quote on there, and it says this, and it's from the same man. It says, "When you stand here, be silent. When you leave, be not silent." There you go. It is time to start telling people about what you're losing and what they're losing, and they're just handing it over without, just to go get pizza, for example, or any other minor menial things. You have to scan in with documents to take your children to swimming lessons. Is that what your grandpa died for? I don't think so. In fact, that sounds exactly like what he was fighting against. So, who am I representing today? I'm not only representing oil and gas workers, but just utility workers in general. Anybody who is losing their job to immoral medical mandates. There are businesses like ATCO, EPCOR, the city of Edmonton, TELUS, Shaw Cable that are all doing this to their employees. And I'm sure many more. I don't know. I'm maybe the ones that aren't are in the minority at this point for the large publicly funded businesses. But there are also veterans here, potentially teachers here. I didn't see him. And there may even be nurses here. This is for anyone who is losing their job for standing for what is right. So we face tyranny on a corporate level. Businesses think they can hold our jobs over our heads to coerce us into taking an experimental gene therapy. Our careers and the futures of our children are being held hostage. Some of us are being intimidated by supervisors. Others are being threatened at home even. In some cases, even with divorce. This is tearing families apart because people are scared about their spouses. People are scared about where they're going to sleep. And so they're even threatening their husbands or wives. Families have been divided and become irreparably damaged, and our places of employment have helped instill irrational fear in our colleagues, some even refusing to work with us. So now, after 2 years of working outside in the field, without this experimental gene therapy, companies like mine have decided that we are no longer safe to have on staff and working with the general public. One CEO even said, "It's just 2 little pokes and you can keep your career." Then 3, then 4, then 17. It will be endless. This group has gathered because we're not going to be on an endless cycle of boosters worrying about when our green pass will expire again. I'm saying no. And they will not stop us. And they will not stop with us, the adults. They will come for your children next. And they already are. You already see it. Advertisements showing that children having strokes or heart attacks is normal. Is that normal? So this is an exhausting battle, and one that requires more energy than humanly possible. Some of us have been warning against what is happening in our society at this time for years, some only months. But what we all see is how evil this society has become. Why? This is my own personal belief that I have to share with you. So it is my belief that the Bible actually explains what's happening in our society, and I would just appreciate it if everyone would indulge me. So Romans 1:18-25, it says this: "For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men, who by their unrighteousness suppress the truth. For what can be known about God is plain to them, because God has shown it to them. For his invisible attributes, namely his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly perceived ever since the creation of the world in the things that have been made. So they are without excuse. For although they knew God, they did not honor him as God or give thanks to him, but they became futile in their thinking, and their foolish hearts were darkened. Claiming to be wise, they became fools and exchanged the glory of the immortal God for images resembling mortal man and birds and animals and creeping things. Therefore, God gave them up in the lusts of their hearts to impurity, to the dishonoring of their bodies among themselves, because they exchanged the truth about God for a lie and worshipped and served the creature rather than the Creator, who is blessed forever. Amen." And so what does that mean? God is judging our nation right now because we have turned our backs on him. Our society has become completely evil and overcome with a love of sin. And fighting that battle, I believe, without a firm belief in God, will be exhausting. People have asked me how I maintain such a positive disposition. People may have seen that my pastor of my church was arrested and my church was fenced off, and I had comments on how positive I was through all of that, and much, much more. RCMP officers coming into our building, invading our building, and we applauded them. And then that was used against us in court to try and say that applauding for RCMP officers would spread COVID. So that really happened, yes. I know. So how do I stay positive and joy-filled? What does that mean? And it's funny because my notes are basically irrelevant now. It's over. So what it says here, though, is that I could not live with myself if I did not share the gift that I have been given. And I want to read something else for you guys today. And again, if you don't agree, please bear with me. I still love you. So in Matthew 11 of the Bible, 11:28-30, Jesus says this. It says, "Come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." And so if you don't understand the reference, a yoke was what was put on an ox's neck to pull a plow. And Jesus is talking about the burden of this life and of sin being a burden on you that you cannot pull. But Jesus' yoke is light. And so when you turn to him, your burdens are put on him. What does that mean? That is a reference to the gospel. And if you've probably heard that term. The gospel means the good news. Maybe you've heard this from many people claiming to be religious. Maybe you've heard it from neighbors or just in reference somewhere in a movie, something. I don't know. But maybe you've never actually had it explained to you. Well, what the Bible teaches is that all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God, but are justified through Jesus Christ's death on the cross. And so it is my hope for you guys, everyone here, that if you are struggling with the burdens of this world, that you would lay it all at Christ's feet, and that you would turn to him, and you would believe on Jesus Christ for the forgiveness of your sins, that you would believe that he died on the cross for you, and that he was raised from the grave after 3 days. And if you don't agree with that, that's okay. I still love you, and I still care about you, because what this is about is showing support to those people that don't agree with me. I love you anyway. That's why I did this, is so that I could give you the ultimate message of love. And I want to thank all of you for listening to me. And so I want to close with this. This is not a Bible quote. My wife this morning.
We love you, Devin.
My wife this is. Okay. My wife this morning. It just came up, and she read in Flanders Fields, and I've never had very much emotional attachment to any poem, honestly. But the last stanza is what stuck out to us today. And what it says is this: it's a call from the past to us. It's a call from the generation that came before us. And it says this: it says, "Take up our quarrel with the foe. To you from failing hands we throw the torch. Be yours to hold it high. If ye break faith with us who die, we shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders Fields." Now think about what that's saying. From failing hands we throw. This country is failing right now. It is failing hard. It is showing hate to anybody who opposes a mainstream narrative. And it wants to subject you to medical treatments. And I think where the failing comes in is that 80 to 90% of the population are okay with it. In fact, they want it. They love it. And they want it for you and your children and everybody after you. And that wouldn't even matter if there were any children left. And so, guys, once again, I want to thank you for listening to me and tolerating me. And so what I'm going to have us do now, guys, is we're going to do the silent protest. It's going to be 10 minutes. What I want everyone to do is line these steps with their signs. I'm going to need anyone with a camera to film it. And we're just going to stand silently with all our signs, just like every other silent protest you've seen. All right, so we can start moving now. Thank you, guys. Yeah, let's go. I want everybody. Let's just have everybody, because everybody here is being affected in some way, right? Oops. Sorry.
I know, right?
Oh, and then you just slice it.
the side of that mass. To fight that mass. You can touch in there. Someone suggested in Friday. Like a clap, and it's like you sat.
Yes. Yes. Phil, can you hear me? I'm ready to go live. You have to tell me when I'm live. I'm going to do an interview type thing. Phil, can you hear me?
You're good to go.
Hi, Phil. Am I live yet?
Yep.
We quite the event today. This is a different style of protest, and it's another way
You guys are in on it.
I know. And it's been quite the event. You can
Tough
tell
to hear you, Benita.
we're moved. Okay, hold on. I either gotta pick up a mic or we'll just move. That's okay. Sorry about that.
What's up the back when you blocked out the center?
Yeah, that's okay.
That's probably better.
Hi there, folks. I'm new to this, so thanks for your patience with me while I'm learning. We've had quite the event today here at the Alberta Legislature grounds. Oil and gas against the pass. There was a presentation by Devin, and he moved us with his words today. And there's quite a number of people here, and they stood on the stairs for over 10 minutes in the cold with their signs, making it known, making their viewpoint known. And that's one of the ways you can make your voice known. It might be something as simple as a sign and as simple as the legislature. Here we had a group of at least 100 people. But you know what? One person can make a difference when you stand with your sign. So maybe you'll be inspired to stand with a sign at the steps of the legislature or in another place. But it's very, very important right now that we make our voices known and we make them heard. So I feel it's a privilege to be here and be of service at this event today. I thought Devin's speech was very well thought out, and I hope you get a chance to see it in its entirety if you haven't already. And I hope that you all think deeply this Remembrance Day about the meaning of the sacrifices that were made. They sacrificed for our freedom so we could live a good life and live without tyranny. And here we are facing some uncomfortable trends, and we have to stand up. So I hope you're inspired by the event today. Yeah.
I was born and raised on the north end of Vancouver Island in the rainforest by the Pacific. I grew up playing on tide flats by salmon spawning streams and developed a love of nature at an early age, but then I had to come to Vancouver to go to school. I ended up at the University of BC studying the life sciences, which had always been my greatest interest: biology, genetics, biochemistry, some forestry, and then I discovered ecology, the science of how all living things are interrelated and how we are related to them. I became a born-again ecologist and soon enrolled in a PhD in ecology at the University of BC and became radicalized during the height of the Cold War and the height of the Vietnam War. I joined this little group in the basement of the Unitarian Church who were planning a protest voyage against US hydrogen bomb testing in Alaska. We sailed a little fish boat across the North Pacific, had tens of thousands of people marching in the street, blocking the border between the United States and Canada to get attention. President Nixon canceled those hydrogen bomb tests as a result of the overwhelming public opposition we'd helped create. This was the last hydrogen bomb the United States ever detonated, and it was the birth of Greenpeace. I spent the next 15 years after getting my PhD full-time in the leadership of Greenpeace around the world. Next, we went on to French atmospheric nuclear testing, then saving the whales on the oceans of around the world, and then toxic wastes and uranium mining and nuclear energy and all the other issues that you've heard of. During my nearly 40 years as an ecologist and environmentalist, I have somehow evolved into an environmentalist that supports nuclear energy and is somewhat skeptical of human-caused climate change. Now, on nuclear energy, I'm not out of the ordinary. There's lots of environmentalists today who have decided that nuclear energy is the most effective technology to knock out fossil fuels, to actually replace 2 coal plants with 1 nuclear plant, something you can't do easily with wind and solar, but we'll get to that. But most of the other environmentalists, like James Lovelock, the father of the Gaia hypothesis, Stuart Brand, the founder of the Whole Earth Catalog, Stephen Tyndale,
I don't know, that's what I do. Cell phone, toilet, what's up? Do you know this guy? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. That's all I got. Everything else is extreme. Yeah. Absolutely. I just don't think
Can I get in there?
Stephen Tyndale, former executive director of Greenpeace UK, and even Bob Marley, they have decided they support nuclear energy. Well, Bob did while he was alive. And most of the reasons for this is climate change. Most environmentalists who have decided we must embrace nuclear technology, it's because they're concerned with fossil fuel consumption, CO2 emissions, and climate change. That's not the main reason I support nuclear energy, although it is part of it. You see, people should sort of wake up to the fact that the climate stopped warming more than 10 years ago. 1998 was the warmest year we've had in the last 100 years. Since then, there has been a slight cooling trend. Yes, the Arctic ice was lowest in 2007 in any summer since we started measuring it only in 1979, so we don't really have a very long data set here. But for the last 2 years, it has been rebuilding. Antarctica never did get warm. It has remained cold, and the sea ice around Antarctica has not shrunk in the slightest. And you can find this easily on the internet. Then there is the fact that hurricane intensity is about 50% of what it was 10 years ago, and it has been a steadily declining intensity since about 1998, the time of the warmest year. So it is worth actually looking at this. Then there is the issue that actually it would be a lot worse if it got 2 degrees colder than it is today than if it gets 2 degrees warmer, in terms of agricultural production in particular. I ask you, why are there 300 million people in the United States and only 30 million people in Canada all huddled up against the 49th parallel? One word: cold. Sometimes I think that's why they let us have it. But it is an absolute fact that the most biodiversity on this planet is in the tropics. The second you move from the tropics into places where it freezes in the winter, biodiversity drops by over 90%, because adaptation to cold, I'm glad I didn't have to make that swim across the North Pole. Adaptation to cold is a very specialized evolutionary adaptation. Only a few species have it. Our species, Homo sapiens, at 10 degrees Celsius, naked outdoors, will freeze to death in not many hours. It doesn't take freezing. It only takes 10 degrees Celsius, and we can't survive in that. So, I'm not going to dwell on climate change a great deal because, personally, I think it's not a crisis or an apocalypse, and I don't even know if we have any way of actually controlling it. And why is it cooling now when all the climate models say it's supposed to continue to get warming? I'm going to wait and see what happens because I don't think we know at this point. And therefore, I don't believe we should adopt policies that are going to cost tens of billions of dollars and put hundreds of millions of people into energy poverty and make food far more expensive for people who can barely afford it already. There are 800 million people in this world who don't have enough food, and policies that make energy more expensive make food more expensive. So why do I support reducing fossil fuels? Because I do, very strongly. Actually, there are a large number of good reasons. First is the climate change issue. I agree that even though we don't know exactly what's going to happen with the climate, it would be a good idea to slow down the rate of increase in CO2 in the global atmosphere, as a precautionary measure at least. But secondly, nothing causes more damage to human health in the way of pollution than burning fossil fuels in this world. This we know for a fact. It's not just a theory. We know that coal plants in particular emit sulfur and particulates and mercury and far more radiation than any nuclear plant does. They are the worst forms of polluters in the world, so that's a good reason. What about conservation? We are burning about 300 million years worth of fossil fuel creation in a few centuries here. This is hardly a model for our kids to look up to. Maybe there should be some fossil fuels left for people 500 years from now instead of us just wasting them all. But fossil fuels account for 85% of global energy today. That means only 15% of our energy comes from something other than fossil fuels. One of the reasons it would be good to reduce fossil fuels below their present use, they are continuing to grow, unfortunately, despite all our talk and our good intentions. One of the reasons it would be good for us to reduce our dependence on fossil fuels is as they run out, the shock will be less severe to our economic system. I think it is crazy for Al Gore to suggest that in 10 years from now, we will not be using any fossil fuels. That is apparently his goal. And politicians the world over are clambering over each other to make more wildly ridiculous promises about 80% reduction in fossil fuel or a carbon neutral world. Personally, I do not think a carbon neutral world is feasible. Not with this many people, and not if people are going to bring themselves out of poverty in the developing countries. It's just not going to happen, and maybe it isn't necessary to have a carbon neutral world, but it sure would be a good idea if we weren't 85% dependent on these non-renewable precious resources, especially when there are other technologies that can do the same job cleaner and more sustainably. Speaking of which, the geopolitical reasons, I just forgot those. They're last but certainly not least. Mideast oil, the US transportation system is absolutely dependent on it. Russian gas, the whole of Europe is now absolutely dependent on it. These are the two primary potential centers of instability politically. Reducing dependence on Middle East oil and Russian gas would be a good thing for world peace. I have a little ditty that goes renewable, sustainable, clean, and green. We bandy those four words about as if they all mean the same thing, when they certainly don't. We all know what renewable is. That's good, renewable is good, but it's easy to use a renewable thing unsustainably, like the buffalo, for example, Atlantic codfish. These were renewable resources that were used unsustainably. Then sustainable, we know what that is. It means it will last a long time. We can keep doing it because it doesn't run out. Lots of sustainable resources are non-renewable, like iron ore, for example. There's enough iron ore in the Earth's crust to last for 1 million years. There is no possibility that we will run out of iron. But there are non-renewable resources that are very finite. Oil is a classic case. Then there is clean. Clean means it doesn't pollute. This is a good thing. So we want sustainable, clean technologies. They don't have to be renewable if they're sustainable and clean. Then there's green. And I certainly agree with Mark on the unfortunate aspect of this word green. Basically, the word green just means someone's trying to sell you something now. It has become a marketing term. It has no merit in technical or scientific explanation. It doesn't work for me. So I think the two middle words are the most important, sustainable and clean. Let's look at the choices we have here. Let's start with renewable energy. I mean, I'm in favor of renewable energy, but I just think the green movement has picked the wrong ones. Wind and solar being the two centerpieces of how we're supposed to get off fossil fuels. Actually, the most important renewable energy in the world is wood from trees. About 75% of all the world's renewable energy, measured in units of energy, is from wood, mostly for cooking and heating in the developing countries, but also in the wood industries. Most of the energy that is used to make timber and paper is biomass from parts of the tree that are not suitable for the final product. Another 22% or so of our renewable energy in this world is hydroelectric energy. Only about 2.5% of all the renewable energy in the world is wind, solar, and all the others added up together. Most of it is wood and hydro. Then we come to nuclear energy. Nuclear energy is not renewable, but it is extremely sustainable. There is enough nuclear fuel to last for thousands of years. Then there's thorium, another radioactive natural element in the Earth's crust, which is far more abundant than uranium, and actually many people believe it is a better nuclear fuel than uranium for energy production. So we got no problem with sustainability. It's also clean. It does not emit the air pollutants that come out of coal plants, and it does not emit greenhouse gases. There's about a 2% CO2 emissions in the full life cycle of nuclear compared with coal, for example. The reason wind and solar are not sustainable, in my view, is twofold. First, if you go to Germany, where the prices of each of the technologies for producing electricity are fixed by law, it's called a feed-in tariff, brown coal is 2.4 euro cents per kilowatt hour. Nuclear is 2.5 cents. Gas is 3 cents. Wind is 10 cents. And solar is 57 cents. They are paying every year in Germany $9 billion for solar energy and getting less than 1% of their electricity from it. And then there's the wind, which you've got 12,000 megawatts of it one day, and that night it dies off and you got nothing the next morning. It's too expensive and certainly can't be afforded by people in Africa, Latin America, or most Asian countries. The only place wind and solar is being installed in any amount is where there are either legislated requirements for utilities to buy it or legislated prices that they have to pay for it if it's installed. Nowhere else is solar and wind energy being installed on any large scale. The second problem is the intermittency that is inherent in these two renewables. Hydroelectric is baseload continuous. Biomass can be baseload continuous. Ground source heat pumps or geothermal heat pumps are baseload and continuous, and I'll get to them because they are a big part of this solution. But wind and solar are both intermittent. We cannot run factories and hospitals and schools and businesses and homes on technologies that disappear for 3 or 4 days at a time. Sorry, can't go to work today. The wind isn't blowing and the sun isn't shining. This just will not work. They can only be very niche. Solar is only useful off the grid when there's